As Kevin heard the gunshot echo through the streets, he didn't even have to look to tell what happened. Ben was dead, shot by Dr. Animo on the cold roof of a building. Kevin was lying next to him, injured but furious, staring at Ben's Biomnitrix, wondering what Animo was going to do with it. As Dr. Animo crouched down to pick up the Biomnitrix, likely going to extract its DNA, Kevin made a run for it. He leaped over and held the Biomnitrix in his wrists, wearing it the same way Ben did. But the Biomnitrix wasn't exactly the same. As soon as it touched Kevin's Osmosian hands, it began to somewhat mutate, rusting and warping around his wrist. Its green glow shifted to red, and it rusted even more, but also Kevin could tell through his DNA itself that the aliens were changing too. Kevin's Osmosian DNA had sent the Omnitrix into overdrive. He had locked itself into 11 of the first aliens Ben ever got, his first 10 and Benwolf, and then it mutated them with other alien DNA by accident as it tried to remove it from Kevin's DNA. Luckily, that was all the DNA samples Kevin needed to take Dr. Animo out. Using the Biomnitrix's fusion function, Kevin tried to fuse Accelerate and Forearms. However, the result was not what he expected. Instead of red and blue, it was purple and green, with red armour and spikes. Kevin sped around the rooftops, disorienting Dr. Animo, who tried to shoot him using his laser pistol. Then, Kevin got a lucky break. When the pistol ran out of ammo, he flew in and kicked Animo in the chest. It didn't kill him instantly thanks to his armour, but Animo was sent flying back into another building, and he fell down to the alley below, dead. Kevin usually won't kill one of his enemies, but in that moment of pure anger, he decided it was all he could muster. He took time to simply stand there on the rooftop and mourn Ben's loss, thanking him for all he'd done. Then he called the plumbers, and it was announced that Kevin was going to be the new plumber leader. But not everyone was in agreement. Kevin didn't like the responsibility of carrying on Ben's legacy. He felt like Gwen should have done it. And if he felt being honest, transforming into altered versions of Ben's aliens fused together, it felt like his past was coming back to haunt him. He called his new corrupted Accelerate Forearms Mix Quad Rush. And as soon as he found out he was going to be Ben's predecessor, he immediately went to Azimuth, seeing if he could fix what Kevin's DNA did to the Omnitrix. But unfortunately, it would take time, and Azimuth knew that in the time that Kevin gave him, before he had to be back on the job, Azimuth would only be able to unlock one alien, and probably not re-alter any of their DNA to be stable again. Kevin didn't care, though. At least the slightest bit of help he could get in taking on this mammoth task would be helpful to him. And so, when Azimuth told him he would get to decide what alien to re-unlock, he chose Humongosaur, knowing it was one of Ben's strongest aliens, and also knowing that if Azimuth tried to unlock a better one like Clockwork or Alien X, Kevin was too scared he was going to corrupt them with his Osmosian DNA like he's done the other aliens. After a week on the job, constantly telling himself things were going to get easier, unfortunately for Kevin, they weren't. People were in riot over Bellwood, over Ben's death. Riots were happening left and right, more crimes than ever before, and people were in fear, constant fear. The news called Kevin selfish for going to unlock more aliens, instead of figuring out a way to bring Ben back. They thought that the plumbers would have infinite resources, and over time, fear led to people being decepted by the news into thinking Kevin was a madman or dangerous, not fit to be Ben's predecessor. Even Kevin was fooled. All that was changed by a simple, small act. Kevin went into the lower recesses of Omnitrix City, a city that had been built next to Bellwood to fit the growing alien population, and he simply began to help people. Small deeds, and he didn't even do it to show off to the public. He just did it for himself, to get away from the chaos, and to make himself feel better about not being able to save Ben. People noticed him as Raptormouth, his corrupted Bashmouth and corrupted Humongousaur hybrid, that he was doing truly good deeds, and no matter his intentions, Kevin would be a predecessor for Ben, and whether people liked it or not, he was here to stay. And some people, definitely not, which led to Kevin and to fight off a lot more criminals than he used to as well. Whilst crimes were happening all over the city as it was in a state of chaos, it was nothing plumber level, nothing that Kevin had to go in and deal with himself. That was until a few weeks after Ben's death, when a couple of criminals took things too far. They attacked the plumber base itself, knowing there wouldn't be as many people there with all the chaos, and probably more people out of their element. They wanted to take over it for themselves, and they said that if there could be no saviour of the city with Ben dead, then no one could save the city. Kevin himself went to fight them off, at first using Raptormouth and their growing gold and metal capabilities along with laser blasts. Then using a new alien he called Crystal Moth, who had the power to generate crystals like Diamond Head, who they were a corrupted version of, and as well as having some of the powers of Stinkfly, shooting out a stinking gas that he also used to blind his opponents. An unfortunate side effect of Kevin donning the Biomnitrix is that he couldn't absorb DNA anymore, or materials, at least for a while. After he was forced into having to do more heroing, Kevin eventually, on instinct and adaptation, gained the ability to absorb materials again, though only for short times, and he needed a lot of the material to absorb it like he used to. And Azimuth said that Kevin shouldn't try to relearn absorbing DNA, as it could mess with the Omnitrix's functions, and possibly mutate more of his aliens with alien DNA, meaning even if he re-unlocked them, they would still be corrupted. In fact, every time Kevin went to Azimuth to try and get the Biomnitrixes fixed, Azimuth seemed disappointed. Obviously the Biomnitrixes were Ben's invention and not his, and he called them rudimentary, but in a sort of reminiscing way, because even Kevin could tell, as much as he hated him, Azimuth missed Ben. Azimuth complained that with the fusion capabilities of the Biomnitrix and its inability to transform into a singular alien, he wasn't able to tell whether Humongousaur's DNA had been corrupted when he re-added it, or whether that was corruption from the fusions he was taking on, and it was only limited to the fusions and not the DNA sample. Unfortunately, not even all of Kevin's DNA samples could have helped him with what came next. A whole lot of villains, and a whole lot of things the plumbers themselves couldn't handle. Vilgax had been watching the chaos for a while, not knowing whether to swoop in and initiate a warrior's challenge, where if he defeated Kevin, he would regain ownership over the Earth, have it his empire. He decided not to, though that doesn't mean he just sat on his spaceship and twiddled his thumbs. No, Vilgax stayed on Earth. In fact, he was monitoring the chaos, trying to find someone who could help him in his task of killing Kevin. As much as Vilgax longed for the Omnitrix and the Ultimatrix, what he really wanted was now the Biomnitrix. But he knew that if he killed Kevin, then someone else would take its place, like when Ben was killed. So what he wanted to do was to lure Kevin away somewhere remote, where he wouldn't have backup, and where Vilgax could take it straight away. without Ben to trick him and take it back from him again. And then his plan was to break back into Plumber HQ, take back the Omnitrix and Ultramatrix as well, and have power over every alien in the universe by knowing all of their weaknesses. But then he finally found someone who themselves was going through a struggle thanks to Ben's death. Dr. Animo. He was the #1 target for the plumbers right then, and he had almost been caught numerous times. But he had risen up the criminal empire the past few years before then. He had his own sort of crazy that allured people. And, thanks to him, he basically had an army of criminals at his disposal. So many people hated him for killing Ben, that wasn't going to be enough. So Vilgax approached him, seeing that not only could Animo help him, but he could help Animo. And that deal would be enough to sway Animo, and then Vilgax could finally have what he wanted, and give Animo a chance at what he wanted. Unlimited DNA, the same thing Vilgax had. Just not the criminal he thought he was taking out. Vilgax burst out of the ground, ready to kill Kevin straight away. But Kevin transformed into a new transformation, one that neither Animo or Vilgax had ever seen, but it was one of his strongest. See, Kevin had been going to Azimuth more and more over time, and figured out that he had unlocked Wildvine, actually just through all his effort. It seemed that Omnitrix was adapting to his DNA over time, so after a while, Kevin would finally have all his aliens back, though they might be corrupted. However, Azimuth did have to do a bit of work to get Wildvine. He finally had it, and fused with his corrupted Heat Blast, Kevin was ready to take out the two criminals. In the end, he absolutely demolished them, locking them both up in Plumber Prison for good, never to escape. And in that moment, he finally felt like he was good enough to be Ben 10's predecessor.